All right, we're sitting here at the BDL production studio. I have got in here a legend of NASCAR, Mr. Red Farmer. If y'all don't know who it is, you're missing a lot because he's been in NASCAR racing now. How long you been in it, Mr. Red?
Since 1953, so that's pretty good time. 1953 is when I joined NASCAR.
You are one of the top 50 drivers in NASCAR. That puts you in a pretty good group of people right there.
Well, I'm real proud of that, and I'm also proud of the fact that, you know, everybody said, well, don't you wish you was born now making all the money they have? I said, yeah, but they can't say they ran against Lee Petty and Buck Baker and Fireball Roberts and Curtis Turner and Junior Johnson and guys like Ralph Moody, those guys back in the 50s. I said, that means more to me than making a lot of money.
Well, you know, you was telling us last night, you're probably one of the only few people that can actually say you ran against all the Earnhardts is what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I raced against Ralph Earnhardt, Dale's daddy, back in '56 in the 200-lap race in Concord, North Carolina. So, like I said, I've raced against most of them, second and third generations, you know, before. So, Ralph Dale's daddy was a great driver too, especially on dirt.
I guess the Petties also, you raced against Richard and Kyle
and Lee.
Did you ever get to race with Adam?
Yeah, no, I raced with Lee too, Lee Petty.
Yeah.
So, out of that 49 NASCAR's top 50 drivers of all time, I raced against 49 of them.
Really?
Yeah, the only one that I can remember was Red Baron, because he retired, I think, in 52 or 53, just about the time I started.
Well, now, last night you was also telling us about your first race, and let's describe to the folks not only the race but the track. That you actually were racing on the beach, wasn't you?
Yeah, on the 1953, I took a Hudson up from Miami, Florida. I lived in Miami at the time, and we took a Hudson up from Miami to race on it. It was actually around a 4-mile racetrack. We used to race about 2 miles down the beach, make a north turn, high bank dirt, come back out on the A1A, the little old narrow asphalt, and run 2 miles south and go down into the south turn and come back out on the beach. So we had 2 miles on the asphalt down one way and 2 miles down the beach on the other.
And your first race, how did you get in your first race and your career started right there at that track, right?
No, I started actually back in 1948 racing in Opelika, Florida. And it was just an abandoned airport at the time. And we run down one of the little runways, and then we turn through the dirt and come over and come back on another runway and come back the other direction. So the 2 straightaways was asphalt and the 2 turns was dirt going between the 2 runways. So that's actually how I got started in that, and driving a buddy of mine's car. His daddy owned the car, Earl's Glass Company owned the car, and I drove his old 34 Ford with a flathead in it at the time, and I went in to come off too hard on the asphalt, hit the bank, and turned the car over about 4 times. Well, that's 2 times anyway, and I landed on 4 wheels and recranked the motor and kept running. I thought that was a lot of fun, so I've been doing it ever since.
And now you have got the oldest, you was telling me you got the oldest sponsor in the business. Let's give them a shout out right now.
Well, Long Lewis Ford in Bessemer, Alabama, up in where I live, he's been my sponsor this year. It will be 50 years that Long Lewis Ford has been sponsoring me, and Mr. Von Burrell, who was a manager there, and he's still there. And what made me real proud about the whole deal, it was done on a handshake. Me and Mr. Burrell shook hands on a sponsorship deal in 1962, and there's never been a word put on a piece of paper for lawyers or anything like that. You know, it's just been a gentleman's agreement, been that way for 50 years.
Now, Red, we cannot talk to you in the state of Alabama without talking about the Alabama gang. Let's talk about the original Alabama gang just a minute.
Well, the original Alabama gang is Donnie Allison, Bobby Allison, myself. We're the only 3 original members.
I thought Neil Bonnet was in.
No, they was not in the original. Okay. They was just added.
Okay.
But the 3 original is, in fact, we've got paperwork on that. We got papers, I'd say, on that. Bobby and Donnie and myself, we're the 3 original members, and we ran that for many years and got our reputation from running 3 and 4 nights a week all over the United States. We was pretty well competitive. When we went to the racetrack, most of the time we'd qualify 1, 2, 3, or all of us in the top 5. And I knew if I wanted to win a race, I said Bobby and Donnie would be the one I'd have to outrun to do it. And we was great friends. In fact, at one time we all 3 lived in the same apartment. But we knew when we got on the racetrack, then it was every man for himself. I didn't show Bobby or Donnie anything, and they do the same way as me. So that's why we raced for many years together like that. And Donnie was telling me he kept up with it a lot more than I did at the time, and I think it was somewhere in the 60s, early 60s, when we was really dominating racing at the time, that we ran 106 races one year, and the three of us won 86 of them. So that's pretty well, we was pretty well dominant, and that's the way the Alabama gang got started. Then they came along years later, we kind of let Neil come in there as a Alabama gang member, and then Davey came in a little bit later, but they had to do something to prove their worth before we let them get in there. But they weren't the original. Just the three of us was the original for many, many years. We're the ones that started it.
One time, y'all just dominated racing.
Yeah.
It was the Alabama gang, and then everybody wanted to kind of be like that. And then the racing, it kind of, when did it go? When did it get so commercial? And it was that when they started the Talladega race? When, I read an article about you the other night, and somebody asked you the question about these race car drivers doing physical fit, going to the gym and doing all kind of physical fitness. And you said back in y'all's day, y'all was climbing under cars, changing transmissions, and that was y'all did plenty of exercise. Let's talk about that a bit.
Well, I mean, that's right. A lot of drivers nowadays are in the contract, and they don't ever see that race car that shows up at the racetrack on Thursday. So they got 4 or 5 days that they're not doing anything, to keep in shape like that. Some of them got hobbies, but, the guys that work and build their own race cars and work on them 24/7 and keep them ready to run. We raced Thursday night at Huntsville, Friday night at Birmingham, and Montgomery on Saturday night, and looked for a place to run Sunday. A lot of times we'd run tracks on Sunday. So we run 4 nights a week, and we had 3 days to more or less bust our butt and get those cars ready to run 4 more races in 3 days. So we didn't have any downtime. So we stayed either working on those cars all the time, and that was all the exercises we needed at the time. But the drivers nowadays that just show up with a helmet, they've got to keep themselves in shape, because nowadays you can't just sit back and wait for everybody to blow up and win a race. You got to jump up on the wheel when they drop the green flag and run that way wide open if you expect to win the race.
I got to ask you this, Red. How does it feel to be in a pack of 43 cars, running 200 miles an hour, door to door, bumper to bumper? Can you share that feeling with an audience?
I don't think you can share that feeling with people. It's something that you have to feel, but you would have to actually do it to be able to get the adrenaline pumping it like it does like this. There's nothing, you can always be nervous about it when it starts, but I was always had a lot of butterflies when I started somewhere like Daytona or Talladega Speedway. You'd be kind of nervous, but when they drop that green flag, all those butterflies fly out the window.
It's all business.
It's all business then. That's when, I just used to love that. In fact, I've basically been known as a short track driver. I've been able to win Permits X 300 at Daytona Beach, 300 miler down there, and I won 2 500-mile ARCA races at Talladega Super Speedway. So I've run all the racetracks at one time or the other. It was just a feeling that it's hard to explain it till you get into it. There's other people's got other sports that they feel the same way about, but there's nothing to replace it when they drop that green flag when you got 40 cars bumper to bumper, and you, like I say, those butterflies out the window. It's all business. Put it on the format, go out there and race.
Hey y'all, we're talking to Red Farmer, one of the original members of the Alabama gang. Now I got to ask you this. What are you doing down here in Wilcox County today?
Oh, I'm down here for some friends of mine, and Tony and Chad McManus that own the Wil-Mar Trucking Company, and down here doing a little bit of hunting with them all season.
Well, of course, this is a hunting and fishing show, and you are an avid hunter and fisherman, and you got to send me that picture of that 12-pound bass you showed me last night.
Yeah, I'll do that. In fact, you was talking about getting a museum going, fishing museum, and I said, I told them they ever get that thing going, I'll have to get a picture, that big picture that was in, or either made them let them. I got that thing mounted up on the wall. I may even let you borrow it.
All right, good. We're talking about the Hunting and Fishing Museum that we're trying to get in the Black Belt area. We don't know exactly yet where we're going to locate it, but we are going to locate it in the Black Belt, and Red Farmer will be a huge part of that museum when we get it down here. I got to ask you one more question before you have to go. You've been racing how many years in NASCAR? It's over 60 years, right?
I started in 1953.
And you told me last night you are still racing.
Yeah, I'm still racing. I still enjoy it, still love to do it, and I got a little mono about it. I tell myself I'm going to wear out, not rust out.
And there's something else you said last night that I'd like to get on this interview about the about the young drivers getting mad. And
well, you know, the way they do nowadays, they've got NASCAR going to find them. We used to settle those things ourselves, you know, in the pits. Very seldom would we get into fisticuffs, but you had to have respect for the other drivers. I always felt that way, and I told them then, back in the years, I said, I got to be a professional fighter and an amateur driver. I don't want to. I'm in the wrong sports. They don't really show the sportsmanship or the respect I think that they need to at some, especially these younger drivers. I think the young drivers that come in nowadays, it's a tough pill to swallow to get in there to try to race against some of those guys like Jeff Gordon and Tony Stewart and this, that, and the other. And I think a lot of them think they got a chip on their shoulder and they got to go out there and do crazy things to try to establish himself, which I don't think they get respect from it. You know, we all had the same trouble. You look at Kurt Busch when he first came into it. You know, everybody couldn't stand him. Then after a few years, I think, you know, Penske kind of calmed him down a little bit. And I think Kyle Busch come in with the same attitude that he had to prove himself and kind of overdrives every once in a while. And I think Gibbs is trying to straighten him out a little bit. But I think it takes a couple of years in NASCAR, learn exactly what you got to do, you know, to be able to be a competitive, or you're going to lose your ride. But you still got to respect those older drivers that's been out there for years and years. They're going to give you a space, but you got to prove yourself first.
Got to earn their respect.
That's right. Got to get the respect.
Put you on the spot now. Mm-hmm. In your lifetime with NASCAR, who would you say is the best driver besides yourself that you've ever raced against?
I've thought about that a lot, and there's so many of them. I mean, because you got to go the years, but you know, when I raced back in the early 50s, you had Fireball Roberts and Lee Petty and Curtis Turner, Joe Weatherly, and Lee and Buck Baker, and all those drivers like back in those days, Junior Johnson, and then Ralph Earnhardt, and all those other. They was great drivers in their time, and then of course when I raced all those years with Bobby Allison and Johnny, I always thought Bobby was one of the smoothest drivers in the world. But I actually, if I had to pick who I think is the best driver, and I'll tell you why, I think it's Tony Stewart. Now, always before, I still think the number one driver would be A.J. Foyt. And then I would say Tony Stewart would be next in line. And the reason I say that, because they could win in anything they got into. They didn't just run short track or super speedways or road courses. They ran, you know, A.J., he won in midgets, he won in sprint cars, he won in Silver Crown cars, he won at Le Mans and the Formula One cars, and everything he got into, he won races. And that's the same way Tony is. Tony could get in anything that's got a steering wheel and a gas pedal and win races in it. So many drivers that they can drive super speedways great. They can run the mile and a half good. They can't run good on the short tracks, and they can't do this, that, and the other. There's so many different divisions on road courses and stuff. But you take Tony, and he runs good at the short tracks. At Martinsville, he runs good on the mile and a half tracks. He runs good on the 2 mile tracks and restrictor plate racing. And then he gets on road courses and runs road courses. I mean, and regardless what kind of car he's in, he wins in. And that's the reason I think there's a lot of good drivers that run the thing, but they can't run them all. Mm-hmm. And I think A.J. Foyt and Tony Stewart is probably the two best.
And that's coming from one of the top 50 drivers in NASCAR, Mr. Red Farmer. Red, you don't know how much I appreciate you taking the time to do this today. And you're going to come back spring turkey season, and we're going to go in the studio, have a live show, and let the listeners call in and ask you some of these questions. And I really do appreciate you doing this.
Well, I'm looking forward to March when they open up turkey season and coming down here and doing that.
Well, I appreciate it. Red Farmer. Thank you, Mr. Red.